Hello, welcome to the Hat on Head News Cabin, April 16th, Thursday here. Just going to give you rundown some of the headlines, talk about what's going on. We got an article here with how crime is down in New York City. Not very surprising when there's not many people there, that criminals are also there. Not there, well, reduced amount. Then we have the reduced air pollution that's going on right now with coronavirus, and give you the Worldometers numbers and then a rundown Financial Times with the headlines. Yeah, so just kind of what the changes are that's going on right now, as the world has never been the same. We've never done this before, and so there's a lot of changes. First thing we're going to do is take a look at the Worldometers numbers. All right, so we have 2,100,000. All right, here we go. 2,100,000 cases, 136,000 deaths. And it went up, guys. Yesterday was had the most deaths so far, so we are in the full swing of this pandemic, trying to see how to get out of it. No matter what the death toll is, we cannot shelter in place indefinitely, which it does seem like a lot of politicians and a lot of people out there just think that that's something that's possible, that doing this would not cause more damage over the long term than the amount of dead, which I think it's clear to me that the damage would be much more significant if we just decide to force everyone to stay home because people need to live. All right, now let's take a look here at all right. So President Donald Trump will announce guidelines on Thursday on reopening the economy as the U.S. recorded its highest single-day death toll. "We want to get our country back, and we're going to do it soon," said Mr. Trump, adding that governors were chomping at the bit. But many state leaders have indicated that they are not ready to relax social distancing. New York, which mandated face mask use only on Wednesday, has tapped McKinsey to develop a Trump-proof plan to safely lift lockdowns. State Governors Andrew Cuomo, who has joined with 6 other Northeastern governors to coordinate their policies, said on Wednesday the decision to reopen business would be guided by public health and safety considerations. Gavin Newsom, governor of California, earlier this week outlined 6 criteria for relaxing social distancing rules and stay-at-home orders, including more testing and contact tracing. A record 2,492 people died in the U.S. over the past 24 hours, the first time new fatalities topped 2,000 for 2 consecutive days. More than 644,000 cases have been confirmed across the country, leading to 28,500 deaths. Says the Coronavirus Digest here, U.S.-China tensions are rising over access to data from Wuhan that could help trace the outbreak's origin as global cases top 2 million. The UK is expected on Thursday to extend its coronavirus lockdown, but hopes are rising that the peak of the crisis is approaching and a gradual easing of restrictions will begin next month. The Gates Foundation more than doubled its funding to fight coronavirus as allies lined up to condemn Donald Trump's decision to suspend World Health Organization funding. Germany will reopen many shops on Monday and some schools from May 4th, but new contact tracing apps are raising privacy concern. Liechtenstein is piloting a radical biometric basic tracking program. Top ministers defended Sweden's decision not to impose a lockdown despite a mounting death toll and also growing immunity, which is the goal that we should be working towards since we don't have a vaccine. Portugal has surprisingly managed better than most. This right here, we're going to just take a look at this data. I'm going to explain it real quick. I already showed this to you in a previous segment of Hat on Head, but this is basically the growth of each country's coronavirus pandemic lined up from when it started. So this date here is the days since average daily cases first passed 30. So this is sometime in February and March for all of these. But if they didn't kind of put them all up against each other, they'd be staggered out. So it would be hard for us to compare the steepness of the curve. We see the U.S. has kind of the steepest curve here. Um, yeah, and then these countries were able to stop the spread um, faster than we were here. So that's an interesting piece of data. Alright guys, now we're going to take a look at this article here, which is from the Washington Post. Crime fell in a lockdown in New York City, but less than you might think. For New Yorkers of a certain age, photos of empty New York City streets evoke a particular question. How much safer is the city when everyone is being asked to stay at home? It's by no means the most important question at the moment, as thousands continue to die each week of COVID-19, the disease caused by the coronavirus that has spread across the world, but it's a question that to some degree captures a sense of the extent to which life in New York has changed. The answer in short is that crime has fallen. Data reported by the New York Police Department through its CompuStat system showed that the number of major crimes committed in the city over the past 28 days are down by about 30% relative to the same period in 2019. That includes a few days before the lockdown, which was announced on March 20th. In recent days, the drop relative to a year ago has been about a third. Major crimes are down about a third in New York City. So there you go. And then we're going to take a look. In more sweeping contrast, reported grand larcenies are down substantially. Burglaries, though, are about the same they were last year. Drop increase. So there you go. Oh, and this is here, so there's a difference. And then here we look that Manhattan has had a more significant drop in. The drop has been steeper in Manhattan than elsewhere, particularly in Manhattan's South Patrol Borough. All right, so that's something that's crime is down. Another thing that that is down is air pollution. So obviously, as people are not commuting, as factories are shut down, the emissions that we're putting out there, we're not polluting as much. Environmentalists are trying to measure this all the time, and this is a rare opportunity for them to actually look at what would happen if the entire world population became serious about reducing our greenhouse gas emissions. And environmentalists, there's in cities around the world, there's different times where they have one day off of commuting, or they try and do this, but it's really hard, obviously, to do this, to get people to stay home. And it's an amazing time for environmentalists to really be able to delve in and take a look at what's going on. So that's definitely. So here we go. Coronavirus lockdown effect on air pollution provides rare glimpse of low carbon future. The COVID-19 pandemic has caused industrial activity to shut down and cancel flights and other journeys, slashing greenhouse gas emissions and air pollution around the world. If there is something positive to take from this terrible crisis, it could be that it's offered a taste of the air we might breathe in a low carbon future. The WHO estimates that about 3 million people die each year from ailments caused by air pollution, and that more than 80% of people living in urban areas are exposed to air quality levels that exceed safe limits. The situation is worse in low-income countries where 98% of cities fail to meet WHO air quality standards. 2 weeks after the nationwide lockdown was announced on March 23rd in the UK, nitrogen pollution in some cities fell by as much as 60% compared to the same period in 2019. NASA revealed that nitrogen pollution over New York and other major metropolitan areas in northeastern U.S. was 30% lower in March 2020 compared to the monthly average from 2015 to 2019. Most nitrogen comes from road transport and power plants, and it can exacerbate respiratory illnesses such as asthma. It also makes symptoms worse for those suffering from lung or heart condition. Nitrogen emissions have been particularly thorny problems for Europe, with many countries in breach of EU limits. Look at this contrast. New York City. Wow, that's pretty impressive. That's the average 2015 to 2019. And then, you look at how I mean, it goes up into Boston. Well, Boston is also got its own pollution there, but I mean, it's just much more widespread. It's much wider than March 2020. And this is northern Italy, which is a hot, very industrial area, and you just look at this huge difference. The pandemic could show us how the future might look with less air pollution, or it may just indicate the scale of the challenge ahead. At the very least, it should challenge governments and businesses to consider how things can be done differently after the pandemic to hold on to temporary improvements in air quality. It's very interesting to see, the drop in crime and the increase in air quality as we learn so much of what happens when the entire planet stays home. All right, guys, hope you have a great rest of your Thursday and keep your hat on your head. Thanks for joining me.